Om Prithvi Shantirantarikshagam Shantir Dyau Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra Sukhinas Santu, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet, Sarvastaratu Durgani, Sarvo Bhadrani Pashyatu, Sarvas Sadbuddhimapnotu, Sarvas Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the Divine Presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravir Mahedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. So we begin today on verses 41 and 42. That's on page 344 of your books. Let's chant together. Sakheti matva prasabham yaduktam He Krishna he Yadava he Sakheti Ajanata mahimanam tavedam Maya pramadat pranayena vapi Yaccha vahasarthamasatkrutosi Viharashayya sanabhojaneshu Eko thavapyachyuta samaksham Tatkszamaye tvam ahamaprameyam. Whatever I, not knowing the greatness and this form of yours, may have said to you importunately, out of ignorance or affection, addressing you as O Krishna, O Yadava, O friend, regarding you as my friend, and in whatever way you may have been slighted out of fun, at sport, in bed, on the seat, or in eating, either alone or in company, all that, O Achyuta, I entreat you, the incomprehensible one, to forgive. So we continue with the response of Arjuna, to the vision that he had just been given by Krishna. We've seen in the earlier ones how he describes what he saw and he bows down again and again, recognizing the presence of the divine, that a great gift was offered to him by Krishna. And now he remembers at this point that until I saw this big form of yours, I had no idea who you really were. I used to think you as just my friend. And so sometimes, as we might, and actually even as far as the relations go, he was his cousin, a distant cousin. So he had seen until this point Krishna as certainly a very wise cousin, but still a cousin, a friend. They were more or less of the same age. And then now suddenly he has been given this great vision. And then he begins to wonder, oh my God, the one who I all along thought was just my cousin, my friend, and now I suddenly realize he is this infinite being. And then he remembers, oh, how often I have just joked with him, I made fun of him, perhaps I have scolded him or even criticized him without knowing who he really was. And so now Arjuna says, please forgive me. I remember one of our Swamis back in India, when he was studying in college, it so happened that the principal of that college was his uncle, his maternal uncle, so their last names were different. And nobody knew in that college that he was related to the principal of that college. And so the principal was also, he used to be the professor of physics. So he was giving a class even where this nephew of his was studying. And as sometimes students do, they make fun of their teachers, they criticize their teachers, and so on. And so they used to say, criticize some of the things that this professor was doing. And after about 6 or 8 months, finally, many of the students came to know this friend of ours is a nephew of the principal. and then slowly, one by one, they would just go occasionally strike up a conversation with this and then say, we really didn't mean it when we were just criticizing the principal. So that's when you kind of get to know a deeper truth about someone. You begin to re-evaluate your early relationships and begin to wonder, well, have I said or done something inappropriate? In the same way, that's exactly what is happening to Arjuna here. Until this point, he had seen this person as his cousin, as a friend, and now suddenly he is this infinite Lord. And so he begins to evaluate, did I do something which, had I known that Krishna was this great being, would I have behaved with him the way I did before? And so he seeks forgiveness from Krishna. That's why you can see, not knowing the greatness of this form of yours, things that I may have said importunately out of ignorance, out of affection, oh, please forgive me. And that's how it goes. And then verse 43. Pitasi lokasya characharasya tvamasya pujyascha gururgariyan natvat samostyabhyadikav kutonyo. Okay, once again. Listen carefully. Natvat samostyabhyadikav kutonyo. Natvat samostya bhyadikav kutonyo. Lokatrayepya pratima prabhava. You are the father of this world of moving and unmoving things, adorable, and the teacher, greater than any superior. There is none indeed equal to you in all the 3 worlds. How then could there be one greater than you, O you of unrivaled power? One thing about Sanskrit is that it's such a compact language. And I've often seen, no matter in which language you translate this Sanskrit, it always is more wordy than the original. And so I can understand if you are not accustomed to pronounce all of these are kind of very joint words put together, and it can be difficult. I mean, because with age, our tongue is not that flexible anymore. It gets used to making some sounds in a particular way, and because I've been studying it from a very young age, so it's a little bit easier for me. So don't feel discouraged if you're not able to, but I greatly appreciate the effort that all of you are making. So please chant fearlessly. Don't worry even if there's a mistake, but that way you will find over time you will be able to do it more confidently. So Arjuna here says, you are the father of this world of moving and unmoving. Clear, father is understandable. Father figure, the one from whom we all emerge. So our parents are the ones from whom we come. That's why it's not surprising that God is often seen as a father figure or a mother, because it's from God that we all come. But in addition to being the source of our very existence, we see also our parents as a source of security. That's where we feel we get the things that we need, our affection, and so on, support. And so, for God provides us all of these. Therefore, it's understandable how God is addressed here as Father. Adorable and the teacher, greater than any superior. Well, there is nobody greater than God. There is none indeed equal to you in all the three worlds. How can there be anyone greater than you? It's understandable also that there cannot be anyone equal to God. If, let us say, if there were many gods, as sometimes people think, which is why people fight, like my God is bigger than your gods or greater than your God. But if there were many gods, it would be very problematic, because by definition, God is independent and God can do anything. Now, if there are these 4 or 5 or God knows any number of people who all of them independent and all of them can do anything, then the world would be in a total chaos. I mean, as it is, it's in chaos with just one God. And with many, it would be worse. I mean, when one God is creating, the other one is like, no, I'm going to destroy the whole thing. So it's going to be confusion. So it's understandable that there is no one equal to God. And of course, if there's no one equal to God, there can be no one even greater than God. There is one nice song by Tulsidas, the great saint in the, I think, around 15th or 16th century, 15th century, I think. He wrote a version of the Ramayana, which is very popular in India. And he has this one song in which he's describing the beauty of Rama's face. And so when he began writing that song, so the first line he wrote was, Rama's face is like, and then he just waiting for inspiration to get the right metaphor, right simile. What will I compare Rama's face to? Normally, we will find in poetry and others, people say, oh, you're in a lot of Oriental poetry. Sometimes they say you're like a moon-like appearance. Now, after having gone to the moon and seen what it is, it's no more a compliment. But in olden days, people like, oh, you're like moon-like face. In any case, we do employ similes and metaphors to describe things. So here is this poet wanting now to describe how Rama's face is. So he began writing, Rama's face is like, and then he thought, and he waited for inspiration. And finally, he just ended up saying, Rama's face is like Rama's face. He could not find any other thing in the world, which is understandable. How would you say God is like? God is like what? God is like God. Because there isn't anyone equal to God that we can compare God to. And so that's what this verse points out. There is nobody equal to God. So there is no one can be greater than God. I mean, think about it this way. If there were someone greater than God, by definition, then that one who is greater would be God. This one wouldn't be God then. So that's why it's understandable why there is no one greater than God. So this is then, after having sought forgiveness from Krishna, Arjuna then says, you are the Father, no one is greater than you. You of unrivaled power. 44. Tasmat pranamya pranidhaya kayam prasadaye tvam ahamisha medyam piteva putrasya sakheva sakhyuho priyah priyayar hasideva sodhum. Therefore, prostrating the body and bowing down to you, I entreat you, the adorable Lord, to be gracious. Just as a father forgives his son, a friend his friend, and a lover his beloved one to please her, even so you should forgive me, O Lord. So here, Arjuna says, I prostrate before you, and please be gracious. And just as we see people forgiving in this world, I seek your forgiveness. You can see the word prostrate. The word is pranamya, pranamami. One of the things that we see is in different cultures, in different points of history, everywhere we have found ways to express our respect and reverence to those people around us. And in different cultures, it's done in a different way. In many Eastern traditions, there is some form of bowing down. So sometimes could be just bowing down the head, and sometimes could be folding of the hands, and sometimes touching the feet out of a mark of reverence. And in many parts in India, especially in the southern part of India, it's not just touching the feet. The person just falls flat, and so the Sanskrit word where it's called dandavat. Danda means a stick. So just as a stick would fall this way, so one just completely falls flat. And so that's the way of showing reverence or respect. Now, it's not exactly how you do it that expresses the extent of your reverence. It's not like if you are completely flat, it's more reverence than if you just nod your head. It's not so much the how it gets expressed physically. I think what's of greater significance is what is the feeling within. So all of these things can be done, and if these are done without any sense of respect or reverence, then it becomes just a mechanical ritual. On the other hand, if there is a real respect and reverence for someone, that can get expressed just by a look of great gratitude, a look of respect. So again, while there are different ways of expressing gratitude, respect, and reverence, what should be remembered is that the most important thing is that all of these things, respect, reverence, and gratitude, are primarily in the heart. And to the extent they are genuine, it may express itself externally in any number of different ways. And that's what Arjuna is doing here. And one of the reasons why that dandavat, why completely lying flat on your belly before the person, is also a sign of showing that you completely trust the person. You might have seen, those of you who have had pets, if you have a cat or a dog, oftentimes one of the things these pets will do is sometimes they'll just lie on their back with all their 4 legs up. And among the many different things that can signify, one is clearly that cat or dog truly trusts you, completely loves you and trusts you. Because when a 4-legged creature is completely on the back with all 4 legs on top, it's completely vulnerable. It can't run away. It can't. So unless it totally trusts you, it wouldn't put itself in that extremely vulnerable situation. The same thing is true with human beings. You cannot offer any resistance. There cannot be any fight or flight if you're just lying flat on your belly. You can't do anything. You can see that when cops will catch some people, and their first thing they say is either fall down on your knees or just lie flat, so that you cannot be any danger. And so one reason why this falling flat on the ground to show reverence is also could be, I'm just kind of speculating. I'm not creating some big philosophy. This could be just one way of understanding, is that this is just a way that say that I completely trust you. So anyhow, we here don't know what exactly Arjuna did here. That's not described here. He just says, I prostrate before you. Prostrating the body and bowing down to you. That's all that we see. If there were a video of what this conversation, we would have known exactly what Arjuna did. Verse 45. Adrishta purvam rishitosmi drishtva bhayena cha pravyathitam mano me Tadeva me darshaya deva rupam. Prasida devesha jagannivasa. O Lord, seeing what has never been seen before, I am overjoyed, but my mind is extremely agitated through fear. Show me that very old form, O God of gods, O abode of the universe, be gracious. The word Jagannivasa, the abode of the universe, shows, where are we normally to be found? In the abode, at home. So this whole universe has its real bearing in the existence of God. That's why God is referred to as the abode of the universe. It's interesting that you find this kind of conflicting emotions, conflicting experience in the mind of Arjuna. On one hand, he has seen something that he had never seen before. He knows it is a special gift. He knows it's a very divine experience, so he's overjoyed that he has seen something unique. He has seen this cosmic form of the divine. But he has also seen that form wasn't the kind of form he thought he's going to see. It was terrifying. And so he is happy, he's overjoyed. He's also extremely filled with fear because it was quite a terrifying form. And that's why his mind is agitated. Sometimes you might see, although normally we associate fear with pain and suffering, and we might think that it is incompatible with joy, but there are, not always, but there are some rare occasions in life when you might have this kind of conflicting emotion. On one hand, you're kind of thrilled, it's something great. On the other hand, you're also afraid. And you're also kind of confused. So this is the kind of a mixed emotions that Arjuna is having right now. And so he then requests Krishna, as we see in verse 46, Kiritinam gadinam chakrahastam Ichchami tvam drashtumaham tathaiva Tenaiva rupena chaturbhujena Sahasrabaho bhava vishwamurte. I like to see you as before, diademed, bearing a mace and disc in your hands. Assume that very form with 4 arms, O thousand-armed one, O you of universal form. So there is this traditional form of the divine as Vishnu. With 4 arms, there is this kirita, there is the disc and the mace. So it's a very traditional form of the divine with 4 hands. And Arjuna is requesting Krishna here, please assume that old form of yours as before. This is a little confusing verse. I looked up several ancient commentaries on it, and no one really kind of addresses this one doubt, which they say, well, assume this 4-handed form of yours as before, I want to see you that way, would make you feel that Arjuna had seen Krishna before with 4 hands and discus and gada, that mace, which seems rather implausible because he says, I've all along thought you as my cousin and a friend. And I don't think if he had seen Krishna with 4 hands, he would have understood he's not just my cousin or a friend, because that's not really how human beings are. So this is a little bit confusing verse. I suspect that what Arjuna may have meant here is that now, after seeing this cosmic vision, Arjuna has no doubt he is divine. Well, he has just seen it. It's a very direct experience. What he is requesting Arjuna now, that this form, this thousands of hands and thousands of faces and this kind of a destructive thing, I'm afraid, I'm confused. Please assume that form of the divine which I'm familiar with, which everyone is familiar with. It's kind of a more pleasant, subdued, approachable form because it's more familiar. If something is unfamiliar, then we are a little bit on our guard. It doesn't make sense. But if you have seen something before, you have heard of something before, it's not completely unfamiliar, then you feel a little bit more sure. So now Arjuna has no doubt about the divinity of Krishna. All that he is asking Krishna is, please assume a form of the divine with which I am more familiar. So this may not necessarily mean that Arjuna has seen Krishna before with 4 hands, because if he had, then this statement that, oh, I just thought you my friend or a cousin wouldn't make too much sense. So I feel what Arjuna is asking Krishna is, I know you're divine, but please assume the form of the divine with which I can deal with, with which I'm familiar, which will bring me, instill in me greater confidence, which will not fill my heart with fear. So that seems to be the purpose here. So from the 1,000-armed one, just become the 4-armed one. We can deal with 4 arms, but 1,000 arms is a bit too much. That's the idea. And so after hearing all these things, now Krishna responds. Verse 47. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya prasannena tavarjunedam Rupam param darshitamatma yogat Tejo mayam vishwamanantamadyam Yanme tvadanyena na društapurvam. The blessed Lord said, being pleased, I have shown you, Arjuna, through my yoga power, the supreme form of mine, resplendent, universal, infinite, and primeval, which has not been seen before by anyone else than you. So we see clearly, first of all, that this was an act of grace. In some sense, you could say that Arjuna had not really earned it. That's why it was shown to Arjuna through the yoga power of the Lord. So, as an act of grace. Because if you have earned something, then you don't necessarily think of it as grace. You think, well, I worked hard, I got it. But when you feel like, well, what did I do to deserve this? And then therefore we call it the act of grace. One question that can come is, why was Arjuna filled with fear? I mean, obviously, the form itself was terrible. But normally we would assume that if we are granted a vision of God, no matter in which aspect of the divine, it should bring us some sense of fulfillment rather than fear. And it was clearly, it brought him joy, but it also brought him fear. One way of understanding this is that it's possible that Arjuna was not yet ready to absorb the complete significance of this form. Because if he were ready, then he would have been enlightened by this time. And we know that he did not become enlightened because there are still 7 more chapters remaining for the book to finish. But the book would have ended by then. So he was not enlightened. So he was granted something, but he was not ready for it. Now, was Krishna perhaps too hasty in giving him a vision for which he was not ready? or like Krishna, like, oh, I thought you were ready. Oh, okay, you are not ready yet. Or perhaps Krishna knew he was not ready, but wanted to give him a glimpse into, like, this is what you might see when you are ready. Sometimes it can happen that way. Those of us who have studied Ramakrishna's life, we know of an incident when Vivekananda, as a young man, went to Ramakrishna during one of his early visits. Ramakrishna was so happy, so pleased to see this young man, and he could see, once he said that when a person comes to me, I can see the person as if inside a glass case. So he could, when we look at people, we just see their physical appearance. But these great ones, when they see, they can see not just the appearance, but the contents of our mind. They can kind of look deep inside our souls. And so when Ramakrishna saw Narendranath, that was Vivekananda's name, he saw what a pure-souled person he was, how pure he was, how ready he was apparently. And so Ramakrishna goes and then just touches him. And that touch, Vivekananda later described, he said it completely transformed his vision. He said the whole world that he saw around him, with all these objects and things, everything began to melt. All the forms began to disappear. It was like, it's almost like if you're just about to fall unconscious and like everything starts melting. And then we all speak about oneness of the universe, and we think, oh, how wonderful it is, like, to experience oneness. But if you're not ready for it, that oneness is we are going to be as much terrified by that oneness as Arjuna was by this vision. And that's what happened to young Vivekananda. When that experience was given, the first thing he shouted, like, what are you doing to me? I've got my parents at home. And he was just a 19-year-old kid then, or 18 years old, so very young, and suddenly find this whole universe kind of melting and going away. And he just shouted, what are you doing to me? And then Ramakrishna then just patted him on the back and said, okay, all right, in due course, in course of time. So, but he was given that glimpse when he was very young, and obviously he was not ready for it at that stage. Otherwise, we wouldn't have just cried out like this. Something similar had happened to Arjuna here. He was given this great vision. He's not ready, he's terrified, but I think the message went across. Even if the vision did not totally transform Arjuna, the message got across to him that don't worry, the Lord is on your side, and you are here for a good cause, so don't have any doubts. And so we can see, therefore it's an act of grace. Through my yoga power, I've given this supreme form to you, which has not been seen before by anyone else than you. By that is meant anyone else in the sense that other than people in your situation. You are a great, in an earlier portion of the Gita, Krishna has spoken about Arjuna as, you are a great devotee, you are a great seeker. So this is not to dismiss Arjuna as like he was a nobody and he was given an act of grace. That isn't true. He was definitely a seeker, a great man, may not have been ready for the final enlightenment yet, but nevertheless, he had this great love, great tenacity, great virtues of that we all seek in our life. So he had some amount of fitness. And so what Krishna is saying here is that other than people like you, people in the same stage of evolution like you, other than that, no one has had this vision before. So this is not to be taken that, oh, Arjuna was the first person in history to have seen this. It's not in that sense. Verse 48. Na veda yajna dhyayanair na danaihi na chakriyabhir na tapobhirugraihi evam rupa shakya aham dhruloke Drashtum tvadanyena kuru pravira. Neither by a study of the Vedas and sacrifices, nor by charity, nor by ceremonies, nor by austere penances can I be seen in this form in the world of mortals by any other person than you, O great hero among the Kurus. So none of the things that we do make us eligible for a vision like this. In other words, a vision like this is always an act of grace. There is no, it's like this, or vision like this, how much do we pay for it? And then we will get. And said, no, then you will never be able to pay for it. But it's an act of grace. So you can study the Vedas, you can study sacrifices, you can do rituals, you can do charity, you can do all of these things, but still you will not be able to see this. So it's always an act of grace. Sometimes this question can come. If as spiritual seekers we believe that our goal is to be enlightened, then what do I need to do in order to become enlightened? And one way that we most commonly think is, well, do spiritual practices. Do prayer, do meditation, do study, be unselfish, help people. All of these things together will give you enlightenment, which kind of makes us feel that all these things are the price we pay to get enlightenment. So it becomes a kind of a business deal. You give this and you get enlightenment. But the truth is that it's not a business deal. Then we might say, well, if that's the case, then why do we need to do any spiritual practice at all? Why do we need to do any of these things if none of these things are capable of giving me that enlightenment? There is a story that Ramakrishna used to tell of a bird which once went and sat on the mast of a ship, a big ship, and then just sitting there. After some time, the ship set sail. It went deep inside the ocean, and this fellow was just nicely sleeping and then woke up and said, okay, now let me just go back. And he just flew, but by that time the ship had gone far inside the ocean. And this little bird, there was only some amount of distance he could fly. Wasn't like these great migratory birds which can fly thousands of miles at a time. And so he just flew and said, no land in sight at all. So then he just comes back to the mast and sits again. They said, okay, let me try in a different direction. So he tried east, west, north, south, but the land was nowhere near where this bird could fly. And finally it said, by this time its wings are totally tired. And he says, well, there's nothing I can do now. Let me just go and sit on the mast of the ship. And then all that the bird had to do was just sit there. And the ship eventually would go to some port and near the land, and then this bird would reach the land. So one of our Swamis, an elderly monk, used to say that all of our spiritual practices is, the purpose of our spiritual practice is to tire our wings. So because we have this sense of ego and we say, I must do something. Because in life we see that you don't get anything unless you work hard for it. And so however much we might be told, just surrender to the Lord. Just completely give up your ego and let the Lord function. It sounds great, but in real life, the ego is still strong. There is a desire, no, I must do something, I must do something. Now, as long as we have this feeling, I must do something, as far as our spiritual progress is concerned, we have got to do all these things. We've got to do prayer, worship, meditation, all of these things we need to do. But when we do all these things, what the primary function of all of these things is to tire our wings. The primary function of all of these things is to make us truly humble, The primary function of all of these things is to make us truly realize there is a limitation. There is I cannot do everything. That without the help of a larger, higher power, I cannot do anything. Only when we learn through our own experience that we are totally helpless, only in that sense of helplessness will real surrender come. As long as I feel I can do something, I will try to do it. But it will be very difficult until then to say, Lord, I surrender to you. Because the surrendering is not a physical act. Surrendering is actually surrendering of the ego. And letting go of the ego is very difficult. I mean, even that instance I told you about, one of the early meetings of Vivekananda with Ramakrishna. So when Ramakrishna gave him that experience where everything started melting away, one of the first things that went was the sense of I. And we can handle things disappearing around us so long as the I doesn't disappear. That's why, just think about it this way. And nowadays, of course, when anesthesia is given, if that anesthesia is given like very gradually, I suspect it's going to be a little bit terrifying. But nowadays, it's so powerful. You just kind of push it and then you're gone. So you don't even know when your sense of I disappears. And so the sense of I is very difficult for it to disappear that way. And so when we recognize the limits of this I, then it becomes easier then to surrender. So the Sharanagati, that complete surrender comes when that I recognizes that I cannot do anything on my own. And what Vedanta says is this: what I that we are clinging to now is not our real I. That big I, the I of Krishna, the I of God, the I of divine, that is our real I. But because I'm clinging on to this fragile reflection, a pale shadow of the I never feel completely secure. I never feel completely safe. But I'm clinging on to this little thing, and I cannot get that real thing unless and until I give up this false thing. But giving up this false thing is very difficult because this is all that we know at present. And so that is the meaning of this verse. That you can study the Vedas, you can study the scriptures, you can study everything, you can do everything, and yet all of this great vision and everything will come as an act of grace from God. In fact, there is one text called the Avadhuta Gita. The very first, it's a very non-dualistic text. The very first verse of that text says, Ishvara prasadat eva pumsam advaita vasana. It's an amazing verse which says, even the desire for non-duality comes to the grace of God. So even you want I want to experience oneness. Even that desire for oneness comes through the grace of God. In other words, it's grace and grace all along. We'll just do one verse and we'll stop. Verse 49. Mate vyathama cha vimudha bhavo Drishtva rupam ghora midrang mamedam Vyapetabhi pritamanaf punastvam Tadeva me rupamidam prapashya. Be not agitated or deluded, seeing this terrible form of mine. Free from fear and with cheerful mind, see again that very form of mine. So this verse, Krishna promises Arjuna, okay, don't be agitated, don't be deluded. I accept this was a terrible form. Now I will show you that form that you wish to see, which will free you from fear, which will make you cheerful again. And then the succeeding verses will show how Krishna then gave him that form that Arjuna wanted to see, which we will do next time. So any questions, thoughts, comments that you have on the portion that we have seen today?
So Swamiji, these verses begin with Arjuna changing his way he's approaching and reacting to Krishna because he realizes that he's divine. Now, isn't each one of us divine, and shouldn't we learn from that and start treating everybody like Krishna rather than waiting for some period afterwards when we... So my question is, so it seems part of your teachings is that we are all divine. So should we be also taking away some practical advice from the starting verses we did today?
Well, we should be taking practical advice from every verse of the Gita, for sure, yes. Yes, potentially. In fact, one of the very often quoted words of Vivekananda is that each soul is potentially divine. And so the divinity is in a potential form in the hearts of all of us. And so it does make a big difference that whenever we meet with people, if we try at least in some corner of our heart to keep the idea, here is this divine being in front of me, clearly, but that divine being is still covered in a human form. The reason why it's so difficult to remember that God is present in the hearts of the person standing in front of me is that we don't always remember God is in our own heart. One of the rules of life is that our concept of the world, our concept of the people around us is directly related to our concept of our own selves. How we see we judge the world by how we see ourselves. What is my sense of self? For instance, most of us, well, I would imagine all of us here, we have no difficulty seeing ourselves as human beings. We don't have to read any book. We don't have to consult, like, what am I? Oh, I'm a human being. You know, it's so much a part of our way of thinking. It's ingrained into us. And because it is so much a part of our life, seeing myself, I see myself as a human being, and so I effortlessly see everyone as a human being. I have no difficulty at all. But we are often told all are God's children. God is our father, God is our mother, and we are all children of God. Now that's difficult. We don't always remember that, oh, all these are children of God, or the person in front of me is a child of God. The reason I don't remember that is that I don't remember that I'm a child of God. So just as I know for sure that I'm a human being, the effortlessness with which I know that I'm a human being, if I can have that same surety, the same effortlessness to know I'm a child of God, it will become very easy for me then to see everyone as children of God. So how I see others is directly related to how I see myself. And so the more I remember that there is this core of divinity in my own heart, I'll be able to feel that core of divinity in the hearts of people around me. Also, interestingly, even respect, we need a kind of a reverence or respect to our own true self, that inner sense of reverence. If that is there, then respecting other people also comes naturally. But a lot of us, unbeknownst to ourselves, often unconsciously, there is a lot of self-loathing, a self kind of hatred. We are not, there are times when we try to look inside and it's not a pretty picture. We don't like what we see inside. And there is a kind of, it just sounds a bit harsh to say kind of a self-hatred, but there is at least, at the very least, a kind of a self-loathing. And with that kind of a self-perception, it's very difficult to be with great reverence and respect outside. It just affects the way we look at other people. And so the more we have a brighter self-image, the more I see myself as a child of God, or at the very least, I'm a good human being. That goodness is my true nature. Goodness is my essence. The more I'm able to see that way, the easier it will be for me then to see the people around me as essentially good, as essentially divine. I think so that's an important point to remember, that how we see us is how we see the world. Because we see the world through the lens of our own mind. So what color the lens of my mind is, the filter of my mind is, depends on, that's in my hands. And I can change the filter. Yeah.
Swamiji, you mentioned about how spirituality, you put it like a business, like you give and take. And it's just my thought that it is true. It is a give and take. What you give, what you get. If you invest your time in spiritual path, you get the benefit. Maybe you do not get in dollarship, but you get. And the investment is beautiful because you are investing in you. You don't have to invest in others, because spirituality practice is nothing but you're investing in yourself. It's kind of business, but it's a beautiful form of business, because you're investing on you to find you.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, but the reason why it's not, because the gain of spiritual life, what we gain as a result of spiritual life, is so infinitely precious that what we have paid for it is not of the same value. And therefore it is said that through self-effort alone we can never get it, because we don't have infinite of anything to pay the price for this. It's a precious pearl. We don't have enough thing to pay for it. And so it can never, and that's why all through history and mythology we see that those who are very egoistic, I can go and do it, I can do it, they never got it. And so what we really needed was this awareness. Yes, I tried my best, but I realized, no, I can't do it. And so only when this little I goes out of the way, then this big I comes in. And the big I is really my real I. The little I is not my real I. And so no matter how much this little shadowy I might try to achieve, it cannot achieve much. It really has to get out of the way. That's the idea. Yeah.
So Swamiji, what you were just saying reminded me of one of the sutras from Patanjali, Abhyasa Vairagya Tantra Nirodha. So it's like it's a sutra on practice and detachment. So it's like two wings of the bird. They cannot go separately. So we can sometimes get caught in, all the spiritual practices and like seeking for something. But unless we let it go, the fruits of the labor, and that's what Gita teaches us as well, maybe then we'll only get a glimpse of samadhi in the end.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. You can also connect the two. It's practice and detachment. Detachment is primarily a detachment from the ego. So practicing the detachment from I, the false little I, will then awaken the true big I. So yes, good. That's the verse from the Yoga Sutras. Yeah. So we will stop here today, and when we meet next time, we will begin with verse number 50. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. We bow down to Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. The Sunday satsang, our topic will be harmony of religions. On Tuesday and Saturday, our Arati and meditation will continue as usual. Next Wednesday, we will not have the Gita class. So we will meet on the 21st of October. So 15 days from now. So that's our program, upcoming programs. You're welcome for these programs. We'll conclude with a prayer now on page 3. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.